He didn't understand why she was shaking. Her hand was small, cold, gripping his wrist with a force that didn't match her size. Her eyes weren't just scared, they were pleading. "Sir, you have to leave." Her voice barely moved the air. "Right now, please. If you stay another minute, something terrible is going to happen to you." He looks around, chandeliers glowing, guests laughing, wine glasses chiming. Everything looks normal. Everything feels safe. But her eyes say the opposite. And the worst part? She's not looking at him. She's looking past him. At someone else in the room, someone watching. "Don't look, don't turn around, just trust me." He shouldn't trust a stranger. He shouldn't follow someone he just met. He shouldn't leave the most important meeting of his life because a waitress said so. But something is wrong. Terribly wrong. Before we go any further, where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? Type your city and your time in the comments. I want to see where my people are tuning in from. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because the story you're about to watch, you're going to want part 2. Trust me. He swallows. "I don't even know your name," he whispers. She shakes her head once. "Names will get us both killed." Then she pulls him toward the exit, and the moment the door opens, everything begins. The dining room glowed warm gold under hanging crystal sconces, each light softened by linen lampshades and quiet conversations. Plates clinked, forks scraped. A jazz trio murmured just loud enough to suggest elegance without drawing attention. The Mercer was the kind of place where secrets were whispered, not spoken. He sat alone at the corner table. The leather folder in front of him stayed closed, though every person in the room believed, if they noticed him at all, that he was moments away from opening it. His posture was steady, his breathing calm. Anyone watching would think he belonged here, that he was simply waiting for someone running a few minutes late. But the new waitress saw something else. She had watched the men at the bar, the ones pretending not to look. She had seen the two at the opposite booth, each checking their watches in synchronized rhythm. She had memorized the misplaced screws in the underside of the table, small but new. She had seen the custom wiring run beneath the leg base when she set the linens. She approached like she carried nothing more important than silverware. She set the water glass down softly. Her hand stayed close to his wrist. "Sir," she breathed, barely shaping the sound. "You have to leave. Now." His eyes rose to her face. Calm. Too calm. He didn't speak. She didn't blink. "There are people here waiting for you to open that folder," she said, her voice steady and flat, like she was reading a menu. "If you sign what's inside, everything you built ends tonight." He didn't move. The waitress didn't look at him again. Her eyes traced the room behind him, slow enough not to draw attention, sharp enough to measure danger. 3 men, 1 at the bar, 2 near the kitchen doors, none eating, all watching. "Stand up," she said. "Walk with me. Do not look at anyone. Do not reach for your phone. Do not speak to anyone. Just follow." He remained still a moment longer, testing for a lie in her expression. There was none. He rose. She stepped back, no rush, no panic, as though she were simply guiding a guest to a private dining room. They crossed the restaurant floor together. The laughter never stopped. The glasses never stopped ringing. No one looked twice. But the moment the door closed behind them and the cold night wind cut through the street, the entire world shifted. The sidewalk was slick with winter rain, reflecting the city in broken strips of neon and taxi headlights. The door of the Mercer shut behind them with a soft thud, too gentle for the weight of what they had just left. She didn't speak. She didn't look at him. She simply walked. Not hurried, not afraid. Just moving with purpose, like she already knew the route. He stayed 1 step behind her, matching her pace. The city's noise rose around them, tires hissing on asphalt, a siren echoing somewhere far uptown, laughter from a group passing on the opposite side of the street. Everything sounded normal. Ordinary. Alive. yet every part of him felt watched. They crossed Fifth Avenue without waiting for the signal. A cab braked hard, the driver's curse swallowed by traffic. She didn't turn. She didn't acknowledge anyone. She led him east, away from the crowds, toward narrower streets where the street lamps flickered and the glow of storefronts faded. Only when they were 2 blocks from the restaurant did she speak. "Don't ask questions yet," she said. "There are cameras on this street." He didn't look for them. He didn't need to. He could feel them. They walked another block in silence, passing a shuttered tailor shop and a deli closing for the night. A gust of cold wind cut between the buildings, carrying the smell of rain and wet concrete. She turned down a side alley lit by a single red exit sign. A dumpster, a fire escape, the hum of a ventilation unit overhead, no foot traffic, no angles for easy surveillance. Here, finally, she stopped. She didn't face him. She kept her gaze trained on the mouth of the alley, watching, waiting, measuring the rhythm of footsteps from the street beyond. "You were being recorded," she said. "Not video, pressure, the table legs, the folder weight, the signature, the timestamp. It was all set to go live the moment ink touched paper." His jaw tightened. His breath came slower now, not from fear, but calculation. "Who?" he asked. She didn't answer, not yet. The city's noise thinned, becoming the distant murmur of a world too far away to help. She finally looked at him. "You leave that restaurant alone," she said quietly, "and you lose your company, your reputation, and every person who ever believed in you." She paused. "You don't leave alone." A silhouette passed at the far end of the alley. She dropped into silence. Both of them watched. Neither moved. The night held its breath. The silhouette paused at the mouth of the alley, framed by the red glow of the exit sign. A tall man in a dark overcoat, collar turned up, face lost in shadow. He didn't step forward. He didn't turn away. He simply stood, as if waiting to see which direction the night would unfold. The waitress didn't flinch. She didn't breathe differently. She only shifted her stance, one foot slightly angled, ready to move if needed. The man lingered 3, maybe 4 seconds longer, then turned back toward the street and disappeared into the passing headlights. Only then did the air seem to move again. She faced him fully now. "The table wasn't just a table," she said. "It was modified this afternoon. 4 legs replaced, each one wired to a pressure sensor. The moment you opened the folder, they would know. The moment you signed, the timestamp would broadcast, not publicly, quietly, to the right feeds, the right traders, the right journalists." Her voice was steady, like she'd accepted the weight of every word long before saying it. "You sign, and the leak hits the market. A fake narrative starts. Accusations of fraud, insider manipulation. Your valuation collapses, your board panics. You get removed before sunrise." He didn't interrupt. He didn't blink. She continued. "It wouldn't look like sabotage. It would look like mismanagement, self-inflicted failure, and the people behind it would buy what's left of your company for a fraction of its worth. Legally, cleanly, with paperwork, and no one would ever believe you were set up." The rain tapped lightly on the metal dumpster. A plane passed overhead, humming faintly, like the world knew nothing of what was unfolding in the alley. He exhaled once, slow and measured. "You knew before I sat down." She nodded. "I saw the replacement parts during setup. I recognized the pattern. I've seen it before." A pause, just long enough to feel heavy. "You've seen it?" he asked. Her jaw tightened. 2 years ago. Same type of deal, same type of wiring. I tried to stop it. I warned the wrong person. I was fired the next morning. No one returned my calls. And the company that fell was swallowed whole by the same people who are coming for you tonight." The pieces began to align, slowly, quietly, like a lock turning. "And you took a job at the restaurant because you knew I'd be there." She didn't look away. "I didn't take the job," she said. "I was placed there. Someone wanted me close to the deal. They thought I would help push it through." The wind shifted. The alley felt smaller. The city felt distant. He understood now. "And instead," he said, "you chose to warn me." She didn't smile. She didn't soften. "I chose not to let them finish what they started." The alley fell silent again, except for the sound of rain and the distant roll of a siren fading somewhere down the avenue. The night was no longer safe. It was a countdown. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a small piece of paper, folded twice, edges softened by the warmth of her hand. She didn't hand it to him immediately. She held it between them, suspended, as if once he took it, nothing could return to how it was before. "When I give you this," she said, "everything changes. You can't pretend you don't know. You can't go back inside. You can't go forward alone." He took the paper. A phone number, no name, no label, just digits. "You'll call in 2 minutes," she said. "Not sooner, not later. The timing matters." He didn't ask why. He could see in her posture that explanations would come only when safe. The rain steadied, falling in thin silver lines down the brick walls around them. Somewhere nearby, a delivery truck engine rumbled to life, shaking the air. He looked at her. "Who answers?" "A man who used to chase truths," she said, "until someone paid him to bury them instead." Not comforting, but she wasn't here to give him comfort. He checked his watch. Seconds moved slow. The alley felt suspended outside of time, like a held breath that refused to exhale. When the second hand reached the mark, he dialed. The ring was faint, distant, as though traveling underground. Once, twice, 3 times, then a voice. "Yeah," it said. No greeting, no tone, just acknowledgement. He didn't introduce himself. It wasn't necessary. "It's happening tonight," he said. A quiet inhale on the other end of the line. Not surprise, recognition. "Where?" the voice asked. "The Mercer." A low whistle. "They're bold, or desperate." "Who's behind it?" he asked. A pause, long enough to feel deliberate. "You already know," the voice said. "You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet." The waitress listened, eyes still on the alley entrance, always scanning, always measuring distance. "Is it recoverable?" he asked. "That depends," the voice said. "Do you want the truth or the win?" He didn't answer. The voice continued. "If you want the win, walk away. Disappear for 48 hours. I'll stall the leak, bend the narrative, reroute the timestamp trail. You'll look reckless, but your company survives. And if I want the truth, then you go to war with people who don't lose." He closed his eyes briefly, not to think, but to steady. The voice finished. "And if you're calling me, it's because the truth matters more." The line clicked. No goodbye. He lowered the phone slowly. The waitress still hadn't moved. "He knows," she said. "Yes." "And now," she said, "they know you're gone." A car door slammed somewhere near the alley entrance. Not a warning. An arrival. The two of them were no longer ahead of what was coming. They were inside it. They moved quickly now, not running, but walking with the quiet urgency of people who understood that being seen mattered as much as being fast. They turned out of the alley and joined the pulse of the city, letting the movement of others fold them in. It was safer to disappear into a crowd than stand alone. Rain gathered at the edges of his coat collar. He didn't notice the cold. His mind had already gone somewhere else, somewhere further back. The restaurant, the table, the signatures waiting, and her, Harper Lane. The memory of her arrived not with warmth but with precision, like a mirror held up without permission. She had been wearing winter white earlier that evening, silk that shimmered like snowfall under chandelier light. Seated at the far table, laughing softly with 2 women he didn't recognize. She hadn't looked toward him even once. Not when he entered. Not when the meeting preparations began. Not when he paused at the bar before taking his seat. A year ago that would have felt elegant. Tonight it felt rehearsed. The waitress noticed his silence. "You're thinking of her," she said. He didn't confirm. He didn't need to. "She knew," the waitress continued. "Not everything, but enough. She knew the meeting was staged. She knew the table wasn't safe. She knew you'd be pushed to sign tonight. She may not understand the full plan, but she knows she isn't on your side." The words didn't land like betrayal. They landed like recognition. Harper had always been composed, elegant, the kind of woman who never raised her voice because she never needed to. The kind of woman whose eyes didn't soften, not even in private. He remembered the charity gala in October, the one held at the mirrored ballroom on Central Park South. He had spoken about a new expansion phase, about employee support infrastructure and transparency contracts. Harper's smile that night had been a thin line, polite enough to pass for supportive, but not enough to reach her eyes. He had ignored it. The memory sharpened. A week later, Harper had suggested he streamline his executive circle, cut old loyalties, trust fewer people, rely on professionals introduced through her network. He hadn't listened, but he hadn't questioned it either. The waitress slowed as they reached the intersection of Madison and 33rd. A bus rolled past, spraying water, drowning the street in engine growl. "She didn't fall in love with you," the waitress said softly, not cruelly. "She fell in line with you." The difference stung. "Why tell me?" he asked. "Because the next part of this only works if you stop hoping she'll explain herself." The waitress's voice didn't waver. "She won't." A black sedan turned the corner behind them, headlights low, speed too careful. The waitress's hand found his sleeve, not in fear, but in signal. "Don't turn," she whispered. "Just keep walking." They did. The city kept breathing, the rain kept falling, but the night had shifted again, and now the hunt had begun. Thinned, until the streetlights grew farther apart, until the noise softened into low engines and distant horns. They turned down another side street, this one lined with warehouse facades and old brick freight doors sealed with industrialization, the locks. The rain had eased to a mist, hanging like breath in the cold air. The waitress stopped beneath a rusted metal awning. She let go of his sleeve. For the first time since they left the restaurant, she allowed herself to breathe fully, the air filling her lungs, slow and deliberate. He waited. She didn't speak right away, not because she was hesitant, but because the story needed silence first. "My name is Zoe Carter," she said. "I didn't tell you before because names get people killed in situations like this." He didn't respond. He simply listened, the way someone listens before deciding whether to change everything they know about the world. "I wasn't always a waitress," she said. 2 years ago, I worked for a forensic accounting firm in Midtown. Small office, old carpet. One of those places where everyone pretends to care about ethics while taking contracts that pay too well to be clean. The mist curled softly around the light above them. "I found something I wasn't supposed to. A shadow ledger tied to a media startup called Locus. Fake subscriber counts, false revenue trails, inflated valuations designed to bait acquisition." Her jaw tightened. The kind of fraud that destroys small investors and makes the right people very rich. He understood the implication. He had withdrawn from that deal at the last minute. The press had called him paranoid, reckless, difficult to work with. Zoe continued. "I wrote a report, clean, simple, proof laid out step by step. I handed it to my supervisor." A long pause. "The next morning, the memo leaked publicly. Not the version I wrote. A rewritten version, twisted. My signature on it. My responsibility. My error." Her eyes didn't water. They hardened. "They fired me before noon. I was blacklisted within the week. Any company that looked at my resume saw the leak. They didn't want the risk." She exhaled slowly. "My father called it bad luck. I didn't tell him what it really was." He could see it now, the quiet steel beneath her calm. "You think the same people who ruined that company," he said, "are behind this one?" "No," she said. "I don't think it." I know it. A car rolled past at the end of the block, slow, watching. Zoe didn't turn her head. After they pushed me out, I started tracing the shell companies that funded Locus. Not through lawsuits, not through headlines, through internal routing of consulting fees, lobby retainers, political sponsorships, quiet payments. I followed the trails until they led to the same name. She looked at him, not desperately, not pleading, just the steady gaze of someone who has lived with the truth too long. Tyler Briggs. The name hung in the air like smoke. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The puzzle pieces had clicked. "And the restaurant?" he asked. She nodded once. "Tyler placed me there. He thought I was desperate enough to help, that I needed money badly enough to overlook the setup. I was supposed to watch your meeting, confirm the timestamp execution." He stared at her. "And instead," he said quietly, "you pulled me out." Zoe's voice was softer now, not weak, just real. I couldn't watch them take someone apart again. The rain was nothing now, just memory on the wind. The night had stopped moving, and trust, fragile, uncertain, unfinished, began to take shape between them. They continued walking. Not toward any destination he recognized, just forward, deeper into the quieter parts of Manhattan, where delivery trucks slept and office towers turned their lights inward to save on power. The mist clung closer here, as though the city itself was listening. Zoe spoke again, her voice low enough to be swallowed by the night. 3 months ago, I saw the pattern again. She didn't need to explain the word. Pattern was enough. He knew what it meant now. Fraud not as chaos, but as architecture. "I was working temp jobs then," she said. "Reception desks, data entry, hotel check-ins, places where secrets pass in plain sight. One morning, I was sent to a private equity firm on Park Avenue to cover someone's maternity leave. Just paperwork, calendars, filing." She paused. "That's where I saw it. Not emotion, recognition. They had spreadsheets from your deal pipeline in the confidential archives. Not current versions, versions that were still in negotiation, draft valuations, subscriber growth projections, ad revenue estimates, all showing numbers that hadn't been finalized yet." She looked ahead, eyes steady. No analyst should have had them. No outside firm should have seen them. Someone inside your company, someone deep, was feeding them access. A sharp, quiet understanding passed through him. Corporate betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't shout. It whispered through paperwork. He had hired dozens of people, trusted teams, trusted advisors, trusted proximity. "Who?" he asked. Zoe shook her head once. "I didn't know yet. The documents were traced through a secure transfer account, password protected, logged to someone with full administrative clearance." The truth slid closer. Zoe continued walking, the rhythm of her steps even and controlled. "I didn't go to the board, or the press, or the authorities. I didn't have enough to prove anything. I only had signatures, transfer logs, timestamps." She stopped beneath a flickering street lamp, and a name on the calendar that connected everything. She didn't rush it. "Grace, your legal aid." The name arrived without drama. No thunder in the distance, no gasp, just inevitability. Grace, always efficient, always prepared, always staying late, always 2 steps ahead of every deadline before being asked. The kind of loyalty that never makes mistakes, unless loyalty isn't loyalty at all. Zoe watched him process, not to enjoy it, to measure what it changed. "She didn't act alone," Zoe said. "Grace is careful, controlled. Nothing she did pointed to personal gain, so I started tracing the transfers outward, away from your company, away from Tyler." She took a slow breath. "And that's where I found my brother." The street quieted as though listening. Noah was listed as a contractor on 2 short-term consulting invoices, minor sums, enough to stay unnoticed, but the shell company he was paid through, she looked at him, was the same one that handled the Locust collapse. His pulse tightened, Not from fear, but from the knowledge that the story was no longer business, not sabotage, not leverage. It was personal, deep, rooted. The waitress, Zoe, had not just stepped into his disaster. She had already lived it. "We're not dealing with one person," she said. "We're dealing with a network that's been doing this for years, and your deal, tonight, was supposed to be their cleanest execution yet." He didn't answer right away, because the realization was clear. This wasn't a betrayal built overnight. It had been built around him, piece by piece, placed exactly where he would never look. Trust was not simply broken, it had been engineered. A city bus roared past, spraying a thin arc of water across the gutter, breaking the stillness long enough for the moment to breathe. Zoe didn't move. Neither did he. The street lamp hummed above them, casting pale amber light that caught in the raindrops still clinging to her hair. She didn't say the name again. She didn't have to. Noah, her brother, her blood, the one thread of family she had left in the city. She spoke quietly, not like someone hiding truth, but like someone who has said the truth too many times to fear it anymore. "He wasn't always like this," she said. "When we were kids, he was the one who stood up for me. When our father lost his shop, he worked 2 jobs while I studied. He believed I was going to fix everything for us, that I was the one who would make it out." Her voice did not crack, but something in it had been wounded long before this night. "When my report leaked, when I lost my job, he didn't blame me. He blamed the world. He blamed the people who got away with it. He blamed the men with money and power who ruin others and never pay for it." Her breath left her slowly, and that's when Tyler found him. A black car rolled by at the end of the block, slow enough to notice, quick enough not to stay. Zoe's focus sharpened, following it until it disappeared around the corner. He didn't know who Tyler really was, not at first. Tyler told him a story that sounded righteous, about exposing corruption, about turning the system back on itself. He made Noah feel seen, important, needed. He understood now. Not all loyalty comes from admiration, some comes from salvation. Zoe stepped away from the wall and continued walking, the mist curling behind her like a quiet shadow. He followed. "Noah thinks he's helping take down someone who deserves it," she said. "He thinks you're like the rest, that you built your company by stepping on people like us, that ruining you is justice." He didn't defend himself. There was nothing he could say that wouldn't sound like denial. They crossed another intersection. A street light flickered, then steadied. I tried to talk to him. Zoe's voice was almost a whisper now, not from fear, but memory. "He told me I was naive, that I believed in systems that don't protect people like us, that if I had just stayed quiet, we'd have been rich by now." Her hands curled slowly into fists. "I lost my career because I told the truth. He lost his faith in the world because of it." The weight of it settled between them, not guilt, not accusation, just the kind of grief that reshapes a person. "He doesn't understand who Tyler really works for," she said. "He doesn't know how deep this runs. He doesn't know who really benefits when a company collapses like yours would have tonight." The sidewalk narrowed into a corridor of brick walls and steel doors. They were heading toward the subway. "And he doesn't know that tonight he's delivering the last piece they need." She stopped. A phone vibrated in her pocket. She didn't pull it out. She already knew who it was, and what it meant. He waited. Zoe inhaled once, grounding herself. "I got a message 20 minutes ago," she said. "Noah has the duplicate folder. He's on his way to a notary in Chelsea. If he files it, the timestamp forgery goes through. And if that happens—" Her eyes lifted to his. "Everything you think you can still fix will be gone. No caffeine, no adrenaline, no panic, just reality." He nodded once. "Then we go to Chelsea." Zoe looked toward the subway entrance, wet steel stairs shining under the streetlight. "They'll be expecting you," she said. He stepped forward anyway. I know. The city below waited, cold, metal, holding answers neither of them wanted. Together, they descended into it. The subway platform breathed warm air, thick with iron and damp concrete. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing like insects trapped in glass. A handful of late commuters waited along the yellow line, heads bowed into scarves, headphones, silence. The kind of crowd that sees but does not look. Perfect for disappearing, terrible for being followed. Zoe and Preston stood close, but not together. Two strangers sharing the same direction. The train approached, low rumble building, headlights cutting a pale tunnel through the dark. Wind pushed forward first, carrying the metallic scent of the rail and the faint, familiar vibration that sits inside the chest more than the ears. He didn't look at Zoe. Zoe didn't look at him. But their awareness wrapped around each other like an invisible line. The train screeched to a stop. Doors opened with a sigh. They stepped in. No seats. Just standing space near the center pole. Zoe positioned herself near the door, back to the metal, eyes angled toward the reflection in the window. Not the glass itself. The reflection gave her the car in reverse. 3 passengers, a sleeping woman with a tote bag, a college student with tired eyes, and a man in a navy suit who did not belong here at this hour, on this line, in this direction. Same height, same build, same stillness as the man who stood at the alley entrance. He didn't meet their eyes. He didn't have to. He was trained not to. The train lurched forward, tracks clattered, conversation stayed low. They didn't speak. Words would only confirm recognition. The city flickered past in black tunnels. Preston's mind moved faster than the train. Chelsea wasn't far. Noah was closer to finishing the job with every second. The forged timestamp would become reality if they arrived too late. And there was something else, something he couldn't shake. The man in the navy suit didn't look at them, not even once, because he didn't need to watch them. He only needed to make sure they didn't interfere. Zoe shifted her weight subtly, like she was adjusting her stance. But Preston recognized the motion. It was preparation. The kind used before choosing whether to run or to fight. The train slowed at 28th Street. The man in the navy suit didn't move. Neither did they. Doors closed. The train continued. Zoe spoke then, but her lips barely parted, her voice just a thread of sound beneath the rails. "Don't look up. He's not alone." Preston didn't react, didn't scan, didn't turn. He didn't have to. He could feel the presence now. A second shadow, someone positioned near the back of the car. They weren't preventing escape. They were waiting to see where the two of them would go. The train shuddered into the next station, 23rd Street. Chelsea. Zoe stepped toward the door. Preston followed. The man in the navy suit moved too. Not to block, to trail. That was worse. The doors slid open. Cold air flooded in. The city above awaited, sharp and watchful. They stepped onto the platform. The navy-suited shadow stepped off behind them. Zoe didn't increase her pace. She simply leaned in just enough for her voice to carry. "From here," she said. "We don't run." Preston looked ahead, jaw set, the path clear. "We confront." The steps to the street rose before them, lit pale and narrow. And somewhere above those stairs, Noah was carrying the signature that could end everything. The subway stairs opened into the wet glow of Chelsea's late-night streets. Storefronts shuttered, pavements slick. A few umbrellas moved through the rain like dark sails. The world looked ordinary, untouched. It lied. Zoe didn't slow. She didn't look behind them. Neither did he, because looking back gives the follower confirmation. They crossed the street toward a row of mixed-use buildings, hair salons, yoga studios, coffee shops closed for the night. Between them, squeezed tight like a secret no one cared to notice, sat a modest notary office with a faded sign and frosted windows. The kind of place where signatures went to become binding. A light glowed inside. Someone was there. The navy-suited shadow stayed half a block behind, close enough to respond, far enough to pretend coincidence. A second presence mirrored him across the street, walking in parallel, hood up, steps measured. This was no tail. This was a perimeter. Zoe stopped under the awning of a corner bodega. Rain dripped from the metal frame. Preston stood beside her. The notary office was 30 steps away. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. If they walked straight to the door, the shadows would follow. If they tried to run, the shadows would close first. There was only one choice left. They walked. The bell over the notary door gave a soft metallic chime as they entered. Inside, the lighting was harsh and fluorescent, filling the small room with a sterile brightness that felt too exposed. A copier hummed in the corner. A pot of stale coffee sat untouched on a warmer, and at the counter, Noah younger than Zoe. Same eyes, same build. Softness hardened into something brittle. He held the folder, the duplicate. Preston saw it immediately. Not the ink, not the thickness. The corner, creased slightly, from being opened and closed too many times. The copy had been handled. The real one hadn't. Noah's jaw tightened when he saw Zoe. "You shouldn't be here." Zoe stepped forward, quiet, steady. "You don't have to do this." "I do," Noah said. "It's already in motion. I'm just finishing it." His grip on the folder was careful, not possessive, precautionary. He believed he was doing the right thing. Preston didn't speak. He let Zoe lead. "Noah," she said, "listen to me. The people you're helping don't care about you. They're using you, just like they used me." Noah's laugh was small, ragged. "No, they believed me. They saw something in me. They saw your anger," Zoe said, "and they fed it." The notary, an older man with the slow posture of someone working past closing, watched the exchange with mild confusion, pen in hand, unaware he was inches from the edge of a war. "Sir," he said to Noah politely, "if you're ready to sign, we can proceed." Noah lifted the folder. Zoe reached out, not fast, not dramatic, just a hand extended the way someone reaches for a ledge to keep from falling. "Noah, look at me." He did. There were years in that look, shared childhood, shared loss, shared hope, shared collapse, and something else, pain sharp enough to cut. "You think he's one of them," Zoe said softly, "but he's not." Noah's voice cracked at the edges. "He built a company while we were figuring out how to eat. He has everything. We have nothing." Preston stepped forward, not as authority, not as power, not as wealth, as a man. "You're wrong," he said, not defensive, not angry, just true. "I built a company to prove I didn't need anyone, and it cost me everything anyway." Noah's fingers loosened around the folder, just slightly. Then the bell over the door chimed. The navy-suited shadow stepped inside, not rushing, not threatening, just arriving. Noah froze. Zoe did not turn. Preston realized it first. The shadow hadn't come to stop them from interfering. He had come to escort the folder if Noah hesitated. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was a countdown. Zoe's voice broke the silence. "Noah," she whispered, "choose." The folder hung between all of them. History, motive, loyalty, and ruin balanced on a single breath. The room held still. Even the humming copier seemed to dim, as if the machine understood the weight of the next breath. Noah's fingers trembled around the folder's edge. The man in the navy suit watched, hands loose at his sides, gaze unreadable. He didn't need to speak. His presence spoke enough. Preston didn't move closer. Zoe didn't plead. Silence decided more than arguments ever could. Noah's eyes flicked to his sister, searching, remembering, fighting. There was a time she had been the hero in his world, the one who believed enough for both of them, the one who endured the collapse without breaking something inside. Now she was asking him to step back from the place he'd convinced himself was meaning. The folder dipped, just a fraction. Hope flickered. Then Noah's jaw locked. "I can't," he said. "If I stop now, I'm nothing again. Just a mistake. Just someone the world gets to laugh at." Zoe's voice was soft as snowfall. Slow were never nothing. Noah's breath shook, but the man in the navy suit stepped forward, closing the gap like a door clicking shut. He reached for the folder, not forceful, just inevitable. Preston moved, not to grab, not to fight, to intercept the moment. "Noah," he said, "listen to me. You were brought into this to be the fall man. When this blows apart, and it will, they'll leave your name in the paperwork. Not theirs, yours." The navy suit paused, a hesitation, brief but real. Noah's hand stilled. "You sign this," Preston continued, "and they win twice. They take everything from me, and they take the rest of you from you." The older notary cleared his throat, uneasy now, realizing what he'd stepped into. I don't need to be involved in this," he muttered, but no one heard him. Steps echoed outside, slow, deliberate, approaching. The glass in the door trembled slightly with each footfall. Someone else was coming. The bell chimed. It wasn't Tyler. It wasn't Harper. It was Ethan. His coat soaked through, hair flattened by rain, eyes sharp with the kind of alertness that comes from knowing exactly how close the knife is. He took in the room with one glance. The folder. Noah. Zoe. The navy suit. Preston. Then his gaze locked on the notary's desk, and something cold settled in his expression. "The timestamp upload hasn't activated yet," Ethan said. "We're not too late." Noah flinched. "You don't know anything about this." "Oh, I do," Ethan replied, "because I've been following the shell trail for months. Half the consulting payments that came through that same account, they weren't from Tyler." Noah blinked. The certainty he'd been clinging to slipped. Zoe stared at Ethan. "Then who?" Ethan exhaled once. "The person who taught Preston how to build a company, who introduced him to strategic partners, who helped him land his first backing round." Preston's pulse froze. Zoe's voice barely formed the question. "Who?" Ethan spoke the name like a closing door. Richard Vale. Everything in Preston's body went still. Richard Vale, his mentor, his first investor, the man who had sat with him in cramped co-working spaces when everything was napkin-drawn and held together with caffeine and belief. Zoe shook her head. "No. Richard benefits if Preston survives. His entire legacy is tied to—" "No," Ethan said. "His legacy was tied to Preston, but legacies fade, and Richard doesn't like to fade. Not when he can rewrite the end of the story." The man in the navy suit lowered his hand. He wasn't here for Noah anymore. He was here to make sure the revelation landed. Noah looked between them, confusion breaking through certainty. "He told me," Noah whispered, "that this would make me part of something permanent, that it would fix what the world did to us, that this was justice." Zoe stepped closer, not forcing, not pushing. "He used you," she said. "The same way Tyler used me. The same way Harper played her role. The same way people like him have always used people like us." Noah's fingers opened. The folder slipped from his hand and fell to the floor. The navy suit stepped back. The smallest shift, but enough. Noah didn't run. He didn't speak. He just stood there, a person who had believed too hard in the wrong thing. Ethan met Preston's gaze. "He knows you know now," he said, "and he wants to finish this face to face." Outside, a distant engine idled, waiting. The night wasn't pulling away. It was closing in. They didn't decide to go. There was no discussion. Once Richard's name entered the room, the night shaped itself. Noah picked up the fallen folder, hands unsteady now, not clutching, but holding it the way someone holds something they no longer understands. The notary sat frozen, afraid to move, the pen still suspended between his fingertips. The navy-suited shadow stepped aside, not obstructing, not assisting, just shifting into place behind them. Permission or surveillance. It was impossible to tell the difference anymore. Ethan spoke quietly, the tone of a man who'd seen enough to know when words were only bridges, not solutions. "He's at his house in the Hamptons. He's waiting for you." Preston didn't ask how Ethan knew. He didn't ask how long Ethan had been chasing Richard's trail. He didn't ask why a mentor would burn the student he had built. There would be time for questions later, or there wouldn't. They left the notary office without looking back. The city felt different now, not hostile, not dangerous, aware. Rain thickened again, heavier now, falling in sheets that blurred streetlights into smudges of gold. Zoe walked slightly ahead, not to lead, but because she knew how to move when watched. Noah trailed behind them, shoulders hunched, the folder held like a confession. The black sedan waited at the curb, the same one from earlier. The rear door opened on its own. No driver was visible. Preston paused only for a breath, just long enough to understand that stepping forward meant stepping into whatever Richard had been building all along. He got in. Zoe slid in beside him. Noah took the seat across. Ethan closed the door behind them and remained outside. The sedan pulled away. The ride out of Manhattan was silent. The city gave way to long, wet stretches of highway, where the world outside became a blur of dark trees and rain-smeared guardrails. Headlights fractured on the windshield, each reflection sharp as a blade. No one spoke. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything had sharpened into a single purpose: understanding. The car turned down a private road flanked by towering oaks, their branches arching overhead like the ribs of a cathedral. The house revealed itself slowly, glass, steel, stone. The house revealed itself slowly, glass, steel, stone, lit from within like a lantern, open to the storm. The sedan stopped beneath the porte-cochere. The rain softened the world into sound. Zoe stepped out first. Preston followed. Noah lingered at the threshold, like someone afraid he'd be recognized by the walls. The front door opened before they reached it. Richard Vale stood in the doorway. No suit, no tie, just a tailored charcoal sweater, dark slacks, and the calm posture of a man who had already counted every move on the board. "Come in," Richard said. Not warmth, not threat. Invitation. They entered. The house interior was wide and quiet, all open lines and soft light. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean, waves beating slow and relentless against black sand. Richard walked to a long glass table surrounded by high-backed chairs. He sat. Noah remained near the doorway. Zoe stayed close to Preston, not touching, but unspoken alignment settling between them. Richard's gaze moved to Preston. "You were always going to come," he said, "because you care more about truth than survival. That's always been your flaw." Preston didn't sit. He stood at the opposite end of the table. "You tried to take my company." Richard smiled, not wide, not cruel. Something worse, something knowing. "No," he said. "I tried to save it." Zoe's jaw tightened. Richard continued, tone smooth, controlled, intimate. "You built something brilliant, something rare. But brilliance attracts gravity, competitors, investors, governments, people who see value and want to own it. You don't understand your own scale anymore. You think you're fighting one betrayal. You're fighting a global marketplace built on consuming founders." The storm outside exploded with a flash of lightning, white light washing the room. Richard didn't blink. "Do you know the difference between men who build empires and men who lose them?" he asked. He leaned back in his chair. "Empires are not protected by loyalty. They are protected by sacrifice." His eyes flicked to Zoe. "And sometimes the thing you must sacrifice is the one who believes too deeply." Zoe didn't move, but something inside her went still. Richard held her in his gaze now. "Tell him," he said softly. "Tell him why you really came back." The storm went silent. The house seemed to exhale, the moment before the second twist arrived. For a moment, no one in the room moved. Not Noah, Rooted near the doorway like someone discovering the ground beneath him was not ground at all. Not Preston, standing at the end of the table, shoulders squared, but breath held tight in his chest. Not even Richard, who watched them all with the patience of a man who had already lived this moment in his mind. Only the ocean moved, waves crashing against black sand, steady as a heartbeat. Zoe did not look at Richard. She didn't need to. She already knew which truth he was about to release. But she didn't speak yet. Preston's voice broke the silence first, low and steady. "What is he talking about?" Zoe didn't flinch. She simply stepped forward, not toward Richard, not toward Noah, but toward the window, toward the storm. The glass reflected her, a silhouette, small, still, but no longer hidden. "When Locust collapsed," she said quietly, "I didn't just write the memo that exposed the fraud. I was the one who found the ledger because I was assigned to." Preston didn't understand yet, not fully. Zoe continued, "My firm didn't choose me because I was good. They chose me because I was invisible, a new hire, a nobody, someone who could dig unnoticed, someone who could be erased just as easily." She turned then. Her face was calm, too calm. And Richard was already watching Locust, not to stop what was happening, to time the collapse, to benefit from it. Richard smiled, faint, approving, almost proud. "I didn't know," Zoe said. "Not at first. I thought I was doing something right. I thought I was preventing harm. I thought truth mattered." Her hands dropped to her sides. "When the memo leaked, when it was destroyed, when my name was tied to the fallout, that wasn't an accident. That was the plan. I wasn't supposed to expose anything. I was supposed to take the blame for the collapse so Richard and his partners could buy the remains without scandal." The words didn't shake. She had carried them too long for shaking. Preston said nothing. Zoe met his eyes. "I disappeared after that. I changed numbers. I moved apartments. But I knew someday the same pattern would appear again. So I started following the shell accounts. Quietly. Carefully." Her breath caught, not in emotion, but memory. "And when it led to your company, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should warn you. I didn't know if you were like them, or if you were the exception." Noah let out a broken sound, small, unsteady. Not anger, understanding. Zoe looked at her brother. "I didn't come back because I was asked to, or because I was sent, or because I wanted redemption." She looked back at Preston. "I came because I couldn't watch them do it again." The storm struck the windows, rattling the glass. Richard leaned back in his chair, hands folded loosely. "And that," he said, "is the flaw, the sentimentality, the belief that people can be saved, that systems can be corrected. That truth is something other than a tool." His gaze landed on Preston. "You built your company on idealism, on the belief that transparency and ethics could survive in markets designed to devour both." A slow breath, measured, dead certain. "You were never meant to lead what you built, only to create it, and hand it over." No one answered, because the shape of the betrayal had finally arrived, complete, whole, impossible to unsee. Zoe didn't cry. Preston didn't shout. Noah didn't defend. The room simply absorbed the truth, like walls built to hold the confessions of every person who had ever come through them. Then Richard stood, calm, graceful, certain. "Now," he said, "let's finish what was started." Lightning flashed again, bright enough to make the world turn white. In that white, for the smallest fraction of a second, Preston could see one thing clearly. Zoe hadn't betrayed him. She had been used long before he ever knew her. But the consequence remained. She had been part of the machinery built to destroy him, and the person who built that machinery was standing 3 feet away and waiting for him to choose, fight, yield, break, or become something new. The storm waited for his answer. The storm howled against the glass, wind and ocean forcing themselves against the house as though the world outside wanted in. The room did not move. It held its breath around the decision forming in silence. Richard stood at the head of the table, composed, certain. He looked at Preston the way a sculptor looks at unfinished marble, something to be shaped, not something with a will of its own. "You built something remarkable," Richard said, "but remarkable things don't survive on their own. They are claimed, directed, controlled. A beat. Let me control it, and you walk away with your reputation, your wealth, your safety." The words fell like velvet, soft, deadly. Zoe didn't speak. She didn't step forward. She didn't dare, because whatever Preston chose now had to be chosen alone. If she interfered, the choice wouldn't be real. Noah watched them both with the hollow expression of someone who had just learned the world was sharper than he ever knew. Preston didn't move. For a moment, he looked at Zoe, not to accuse, not to forgive, to understand. She had been pulled into the same web he was now standing in, not by weakness, by design. Richard's voice remained even. "You don't win by fighting people with more power. You win by becoming indispensable to them. Stand beside me, and no one will take anything from you again." The lights flickered as thunder shook the windows. Preston breathed once, slow, controlled, the kind of breath taken before stepping into something irreversible. "Everything I built," he said, "I built because I refused to be owned." Richard smiled gently, not surprised, only disappointed. "And what will you do now?" Richard asked. "You have no leverage, no allies, no control over your board, no trust from your fiancé. Your reputation is already positioned to collapse. The moment the story moves, you are finished." Preston didn't step back. He stepped forward, toward the table, toward Richard, toward everything waiting to consume him. "You spent years shaping this," Preston said. "Layer by layer, shell by shell, handshake by handshake. You built a machine to take everything from people who thought you believed in them." He paused. "And you taught me how to recognize a machine when I see one." Richard regarded him with a stillness that meant calculation. "And?" he asked. Preston reached to the center of the table. He placed the duplicate folder down, flat, open, exposed, the symbol of the trap, the proof of design, the thing everything tonight had revolved around. "No one controls me," Preston said, "not defiance. Truth." Richard's expression didn't break, but his eyes tightened. A fraction. Enough. Then came the sound. Car doors, dozens, slamming shut outside. Zoe turned her head. Noah stepped up from the wall. Preston didn't move. Richard looked almost serene. "You think I came here alone?" Preston said quietly. The front door burst open. Uniforms flooded the entryway. Not police, federal agents, plain jackets, identifying credentials, orders ready. Ethan stepped into the doorway behind them, rein on his shoulders, voice low, breath steady. "The timestamp leak wasn't just planned," he said. "It was recorded. Every shell account, every pressure sensor, every offshore transfer, every phone call. We traced it." Richard didn't turn to face them. He just closed his eyes, not defeated, acknowledging the shift. Agents moved in, hands were taken, documents seized, rooms cleared. Noah didn't run. Zoe didn't look away. Preston didn't speak. Richard was escorted out, with the dignity of a man who already knew how to survive prison. This battle was over. The war was merely paused. The house fell quiet. Zoe stood across from Preston, the storm finally softening around them. There were no apologies, no declarations, no forgiveness, just reality, and a future no one could yet name. Noah turned toward the door, waiting for his sister. "Zoe," he said softly, "come on, let's go home." But Zoe didn't move. She looked at Preston, voice barely above the rain. "You didn't choose me," she said. "You chose yourself." Preston held her gaze. "I needed to," he said, "or I would never be able to choose anything again." Her eyes closed, once, slow. Not rejection, understanding. She stepped back. He did not stop her. Noah opened the door for her. They disappeared into the rain, leaving Preston alone in the house that had held every lie. The ocean roared outside. The storm did not end. It simply changed form.